Welcome everyone to Discourse. That's Abel.
This is Tony.
And today we're talking about the comparison between Cherry the book and Cherry the Apple TV movie. So we read the book, I think, last month, right? February 2021?
Yes.
And then the movie came out March 2021. So we have a good understanding, at least, of the book, which I loved, 5 stars, and the movie, which I didn't really like, but I appreciated, and I think I only appreciated because I read the book.
Yep. And we actually did a book review and a YouTube post on the book, and now we're just comparing the two. Like, how did they do? How did the motion picture
We're not going to be those jerks that are like, oh, the book is way better. Although in this case, the book is way better. I think that the movie did a good job in condensing some ideas and then making them palpable for a movie, right? I think it waters down a lot too. The movie is still focused on joining the military, how messed up that is, and then drug life and how really messed up that is. But the book explores more darker themes and goes more in depth, where the movie kind of just summarizes those ideas.
Yeah, and I think the book was, like 70% Army, like his time in the Army and everything he experienced. Where in the movie, it kind of broke down every portion of his life, like an even, like 45-minute increments or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So it was like a 2-hour movie?
I think it was like 4 chapters or something in the movie. Where you're right, in the book it was like a majority was the Army, and then the last 20% was a dive into drug addiction. But let's focus on the movie. Let's see if we can focus on the movie. We're going to lean more heavily on the book because I think we both like the book, right? Did you like the book better than the movie, or you like the movie?
I think I like the book better because so much was left out that could have been in the movie. But it makes sense to me why they took it out of the movie. Like in the book, his wife, girlfriend, wife, they keep breaking up on and off. She cheats on him a few times while he's in the Army. Where in the movie, that is not brought up at all. And even in the Army, there's a lot of guys that got married and their wives cheat on them. That's not in the movie. And then all these other drug dealers are left out.
I feel like the movie is more watered down.
Yep.
You're right. Even his time in the Army is more watered down and focused on the horrible things he sees in combat, not necessarily the horrible things that the soldiers do in combat.
Exactly.
Where in the book you get a better understanding of how terrible these soldiers were that he was deployed with, where in the movie you get this idea that he has PTSD just because of all of the horrible things he saw, which is true, but it's not 100% accurate.
Yeah, it's not the whole story.
Like for me, when I went to Iraq, there was, I mean, it's shocking and tragic, but the one thing that I have PTSD about the most is losing my weapon. So in the Army, they make a huge deal about always knowing where your weapon is and always having it right next to you. Makes perfect sense. I completely understand why. But when I came back from Iraq, the one thing that I would often just like snap me back into my Army days was, oh my God, where's my weapon at? Where, did I misplace it? Where's it at? It's not next to me. That was the one thing that kept calling me back to the Army, or like that one PTSD moment that I would have is always freaking out about where my weapon is. Whereas that's similar to his experience in that he has PTSD because of the things he does with the soldiers in the Army, not necessarily the experiences.
He was like a medic, right? Combat medic?
Oh my God, so being a combat medic in the Army in Iraq had to be horrible.
Yep. So he, in the book and in the movie, he didn't do a lot of shooting himself. But whenever someone got blown up or shot at or anything horrible happened, he had to be there.
Yeah. So the movie does a good job of showing those moments where he's in combat and he shows up to treat people. But it doesn't really show you the moments he has with the soldiers. Because in the book, he even explains how one of the sergeants like really hates him. And we have like just one scene where we kind of get an understanding of that, where he's trying to tell that sergeant, don't go into the dirt or this area because you'll get a truck stuck. A truck gets stuck, and you have this scene where like the sergeant, you could see that the sergeant really hates him. But in the book, we explore that through different scenes and different moments.
Throughout his time in Iraq. Yeah, that's true. They left out a lot, especially being a combat medic. I think one had to be deployed right for every little mission that they did. And for him, in the book, there was a lot of times where they kept pulling him back into the field because other medics weren't available. So he was already experiencing like traumatic, situations. He was deprived of sleep, and he was just every day was just bad for him. Where in the movie, it seemed like a day job, right? Like,
Yeah.
they didn't really expand too much on.
It was one chapter. Yeah. You're right. It seemed more like a job he did, whereas in the book it seemed like a lifestyle.
Yep, exactly. So they could have done more in the movie, but I think for the basics, I guess they captured the very basic.
The movie was very like artsy too, right?
Oh.
Like very showy and artsy, and you could tell that the directors had fun. But it does not go well with the book that's like super gritty and realistic and poetic, only in the moments where it gets super real. Not that it's trying to be fancy, right? The book is really not fancy at all. No. Where the movie shows off some very fantastic production value, but it just doesn't match with the tone of the original book.
It's like that movie, what's that movie? Everyone knows this movie where there's that trash bag floating in the air and there's that one guy recording it.
Yeah, American Beauty.
Yes. It had a lot of moments like that over nothing, really. Right?
Yeah.
So, I get your point there.
And his girlfriend, Emily.
Yeah.
I don't know. She didn't match what I had in my head for the character of his girlfriend.
Yeah. I guess the acting was good on her part, but just the visual.
The actress is Ciara Bravo.
Yeah.
She has like this baby face.
Yeah, throughout the book, you could see them experience life as normal. I think they were, in college where they met, to getting into drugs. Of course, their weight changed, their features changed, and towards the end where they're nearly dying. The main character, we'll just go by Cherry because they don't really mention his name, and Emily, or the main character, you could tell how the drugs are affecting him. His body changes and he just looks horrible. But Emily, she looks like the same.
Yeah.
Very young
slightly
girl.
More pale, but the same girl. You know who really could have pulled off that role was the actress Brittany Murphy.
Oh, from 8 Mile.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She essentially plays the same character in 8 Mile, right? Just
that's true.
Drug addict, kind of a junkie role. That's really what I expected from the character, at least towards the end.
Yeah.
Like you said, in the movie, she didn't really look like a drug addict, where in the book, it seemed more desperate in the book. Like their situation seemed more desperate in the book, whereas in the movie, it was just kind of something that happened to them. Like being addicted to drugs was just something that happened.
Yeah, because in the book, it goes into like the dark eras where they'll literally do anything to get these drugs,
Yeah, I certainly had a better appreciation for that lifestyle and drug addiction from the book. You don't really get that same kind of appreciation from the movie.
It tells you like the very basic, drugs are bad. Don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs. Drugs are bad, okay?
Yeah. But in the book, the author really gets into the dark areas of going from drug dealer to drug dealer, dealing with their bullshit because they know you need that stuff and they could treat you like shit and you're going to do whatever they want and pay the price, And in the movie, there's only one drug dealer, Pills and Coke.
Pills and Coke is the one drug dealer we see, and then they reference the other drug dealer, Black.
Yeah.
As like this mysterious dark character. We don't really get to see him. Where in the movie, he is around. You do get a...
Yeah, he's around a lot. I think they get in the car together one time.
Yeah. I mean, he still is like that mysterious dark character in the book, but there's a lot more interaction with him rather than what like the 2 scenes we get in the movie.
See the guy that keeps asking him to kill someone for him and then he'll clear his debt?
Is he? I think...
Right?
Is it Black or either Black's brother or something like that? But yeah, there's somebody in the book that keeps asking the main character to kill someone. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
So that would have been a good part in the movie, but they left it completely out.
And that's another thing they missed from the movie is that you don't really get an appreciation for the type of people you deal with in that drug lifestyle.
Because it shows the drug dealers that are like, those guys, kill someone for me, I'll clear your debt. Or they'll step in the coke, or they'll do stuff. And then I think there was even one guy they met at, like a Wendy's or some restaurant, like in the parking lot, and he was a nice dude. Looked like a 40-hour a day work kind of guy. He was a nice guy. When these guys got hit hard, they were looking for heroin. What's that drug they kept?
No, not Vicodin. It was some kind of like Oxycontin. That's what it was.
James Lightfoot, one of his good friends. I think they made a good job, picking that guy as the actor.
That was probably the only character that I thought they hit right on the head was the James Lightfoot character.
The scene in the book where Cherry returns from the army and then his friend, James Lightfoot, goes to visit him. He breaks into his house through the window to wake him up and say, welcome back. Only it wasn't his house.
He broke into the wrong house.
And he got arrested. Yeah. So,
I really liked that scene in the movie. That was a great scene.
Yeah, that was exact from the book. They did a great job on that. So, and the character himself, he did great. Like going to the bank to cash a check for him because he was banned from the system. Kind of like Al Bundy, don't cash a check from this guy. He couldn't do it. And Cherry told him, he's like, oh, all right, guess we'll go home. Like he was so
nonchalant.
Yeah. He had a problem with drugs too. And then his brother went to the army, came back fucked up, so he knew what it was about. He got on Cousin Joe's case about not joining because of his brother, who came back fucked up. He didn't want that to happen to his friends. Mm-hmm. But no one listened to him. So back to the movie, the bank robberies, right? He gets back from the army, and it's funny. Oh yeah, this was a question for you, having army experience. And so he comes back. He finally goes get help because of his drug addiction and his PTSD. And the VA guy seems like he's not even listening to him. And at the end of the session, he offers him the same drug that he said he was addicted to. It's like,
yeah. I think that speaks to that time in America where Oxycontin was the cure for everything. Yeah. I forget what company owns that drug, but that company was pushing the drug Oxycontin as a cure for everything, right? So doctors were often prescribing it for things that they shouldn't have been prescribing it for, and people were getting addicted. But regarding the Army, when you go to the VA, they're very nice, and I think the problem is they have to document everything, so that when you're talking to them, they're often typing. It is that they're listening to you, but it seems like they're not because they have to document everything. They're required to. So you do kind of feel like you're talking to a wall. When I go, the doctors are very nice. The nurses are very nice. But there is those moments where I'm telling the doctor my symptoms and they're just sitting there typing away. Does
it seem like you're just talking too much?
Hello, over here. It is on. But it's not that they're not listening to you. It's just that they have to document.
Yeah. And aside from the Army experience, because I didn't join, the military, but for me, I hated going to the doctors.
How come you didn't?
Because you did. You went for me.
He's already joining. They don't need another person. I'm going to go work at Wendy's. No, you didn't work at Wendy's. Where did you work at?
Some school.
Unnamed school. There was a really good moment in the movie that paralleled with the book where he says that when he came back from Iraq, everything changed and nothing changed. Right? I thought that was a good point in the movie that connected with the book very well, because it's that same sense of him trying to change his life, but nothing really changed. And he's right back to where he started, but it's worse than when he started.
Way worse, because now he's taking drugs. He was already addicted to drugs before he joined the Army, but now he has PTSD.
I felt like he wasn't addicted. I felt like he was doing it because he was kind of like a lost
it was like a thing
trying to find himself. Yeah, just a thing to do. True. Whereas when he came back from the Army, he had a strong reason to do drugs because he was suffering from PTSD. Yep. Along with all of those other issues he carried over from his younger years. Nothing ever got fixed, right? Yeah. He just went to the Army and kind of like avoided his problems. And then when he got back, his problems were still waiting for him. And he had more problems on top of that.
And he got Emily involved and made her life worse. At one point, even almost killing her, getting her to OD. Which was in the movie and in the books. But I think in the books, it, of course, goes over it more in depth.
I think the book definitely goes more in depth about the drug life. And I really feel like they should have shown that more in the movie. Just not to glamorize it, but just to get you to understand how deep and dark that hole was that they were both in. Struggling to get out, but just couldn't.
Yeah, and she even goes to rehab. In the movie, they didn't really cover it. She just leaves and comes back in the bus. And I guess she came back from rehab, right? That was in the movie.
Yeah.
Where
It wasn't rehab exactly. It was like a medical stay that forced her to get clean. And then, where in the book, you're right, she does go to rehab.
Yeah, and they kind of go over it more. Like, they break up. She wants him to go with her because she can't do it without him. And it's true. She came back. She just jumped right back in because he was still doing it and they wanted to be together. It was a waste of time.
Yeah.
So
the trailer for Cherry made it seem like this was going to be a bank robbery type of movie. Which we read the book, we know it wasn't going to be about that. But if you just watched the trailer, you would think that, okay, guy's addicted to drugs, robs a lot of banks, and is good at it. It seemed like in the trailer. Which is not true in the book or in the movie. He robs a couple of banks haphazardly.
mainly to buy drugs.
And mainly to buy drugs.
Yeah, one thing I did notice that they kept from the book, I don't know if you noticed it too. In the book, he robbed a teller that later on in the book, he robbed the same teller, but she worked at a different bank.
Yeah.
Because of that situation. She quit and moved to another bank, and he just happened to rob her again. And he said, "Hey, I remember you." So they captured that in the movie too.
Yeah, it didn't if you didn't pay attention to the movie, you wouldn't notice it, but it's definitely there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the lady that wouldn't give him money at all. But yeah, the robbing banks part was only less than 10% of the book.
Yeah, less than 10%.
But they made a whole trailer about it.
But the trailer, it's less than 10% of the book, maybe like 15% of the movie, and then the trailer is like maybe 40 to 50%. The trailer opens with him robbing a bank.
Yeah.
Right? Where the trailer should open with him like going to the army, seeing as how like that was
the bulk of it.
That's the bulk of it. That's what changes his life.
Yeah.
It just they like to play up the bank robbery angle where if you're looking for a bank robbery movie or book, this is not it.
No. Yeah, because this one was army and then drug addiction and
then a small part at the end that's about robbing banks.
Well, I enjoyed the movie. The book is definitely better, and then you could get more of a feel of how drug addiction really is and just the lifestyle. It's
the horrible lifestyle of drug addiction. Not glamorous. If you thought it was glamorous to be addicted to heroin, this will change your mind.
Yeah, it's insane. In the movie, just the bare basics, just some drug.
Bare basics. I watched this movie with my wife, and she didn't read the book. And while we were watching it, she would often ask me questions like, why is he doing that? Or why is she doing that? And I had to give her all of these additional details that are available in the book, but not in the movie. So if you just watch the movie, you may be a little confused.
But for what they did, I think they captured the main parts, I guess.
Yeah, all the main parts are there. So you'll get the gist of it. Let me read a couple of reviews from, Rotten Tomatoes to see what the audience thought. Because it got pretty low scores.
Really?
Yeah, IMDb gave it 6.6 out of 10, and Rotten Tomatoes gave it 36%.
Wow.
Which is interesting. I like Rotten Tomatoes because they show you the tomato meter, and then they show you the audience score. The tomato meter is 36%, and the audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes is 73%.
There you go.
Which I think is more accurate. Yeah. I think it's about 73%.
Because I give it like a 7-8 out of 10.
Yeah. Here's one from Randy Myers, top critic on Rotten Tomatoes. Holland flings himself into the role and sweats desperation every second, but the Russos undermine him at every turn. What does that mean? I'm guessing he's saying Holland is a good actor, but the Russos undermine his good acting, is what Randy Myers is trying to say.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Which I think, so Tom Holland is a good actor, and he's okay in this role. I liked him.
Yeah, he captured drug addiction and everything really well, I think.
He captured the angsty teen. He captured army life well. He captured drug addiction well. I mean, I think he did a pretty good job. Yeah. Let's see. Jake Wilson on Rotten Tomatoes says, rather than generating excitement, the insistence on momentum at all costs makes the film resemble an endless series of TV commercials strung together.
I don't get that either.
So I think
What?
what he may be referring to is just the chapters, how they broke up the section of the movie with different chapters. Each chapter does feel a little bit different.
Yeah, but that's like a different chapter in his life.
Yeah, and that's why I thought it was okay too. It's capturing this
Yeah.
guy a piece of this guy's life, and there's different times in his life.
Yeah,
I thought it was
especially
fun.
how he was unsure about his life, like you mentioned. He's unsure of what he wants to do. He thinks he's a piece of shit, and all these different chapters are just different things that he experiences.
Yeah.
Which
Oh,
I
one
think
big
that's
thing from the book compared to the movie is that the movie gives us an ending. The book doesn't give us an ending.
Oh, the epilogue, yeah.
We definitely don't get that scene at the end of the movie where, spoiler
Yeah.
alert, he ends up in prison, and then we fast forward through a couple. It's like
His
a
time in
montage
prison.
of his time in prison. He gets out, and I'm not going to ruin the very ending of the movie, but yeah, there's a short montage of his time in the prison and then getting
Yeah.
out of the prison, and then that's where the movie ends. But that's not where the book ends.
Did you get the feel that the epilogue, the ending that the movie made, was more about the author himself than the book character? Because
I
the
think
author
so.
wrote the book in prison, right?
Yeah. So the author wrote Cherry in prison, and that was about his time in college and the army, and then his drug addiction years. I would really like to see a book from that same author about his time in prison, right? Because
Yeah.
prison itself is interesting. I would like
That's
to
true.
see his take, his very grounded, gritty take on prison life. I'm sure it's going to be
Yeah.
fascinating and funny.
That would be awesome. Because you could say it's based on a true story, but not like an autobiography
Yeah.
or like
I
documentary,
think
whatever,
it's
right?
very loosely based on his life because he did
Yeah.
join the army. He was a medic. He did rob banks. He did go to prison. He was addicted to drugs,
Mhm.
but it's not based on his life. I think he's just using his life as inspiration for the story.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Let me read another review from Rotten Tomatoes by Ty Burr. Cherry is 3 movies in one. None of them fresh. All of them over long.
Over what?
Over long. I get it's another guy saying pretty much this is pieces of different movies strung together, which again I think is true, but not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, we're not gonna have one movie about his time in the army, one movie about him getting.
Yeah, I mean, I
Like,
guess
what's
you
the
could
point?
have one movie about his time in the army, but then that would just be an army movie. It's not
Yeah,
about that. It's this guy's life,
exactly.
and people's lives have different chapters.
It's not like Captain America, like trying
Moving on.
to Jesus. And these are paid people from
I don't think so. These are not paid people. No, these are top critics on Rotten Tomatoes.
top critics, and that's all they could say.
Top critics.
Anyone could be a top critic.
They know
Yeah.
what they're talking about. They have an opinion. Let's see. Christy Puchko, top critic on Rotten Tomatoes, says, "Good movies have a runtime. Bad movies never end. Cherry is eternal." So, I think we talked about earlier how Cherry is pretty long.
Yeah, 2 hours.
And you know what? Okay, so everybody's saying that this is a very long movie. It's like pieces of a movie. I think what this should have been was maybe a show or like a mini series.
A show would have been good, but I don't think they would have made a show over this book because it's first book, I think, right? And it's very basic.
They could have made like a short mini series, I guess, with a 4 or 5 episode
Maybe.
runtime.
Yeah, but honestly, movies these days, they're gonna go for 2 to 3 hours long. Like, if you care about the movie length, don't watch the Snyder Cut of the Justice League. Don't watch Lord of the Rings. Don't watch any Star Wars. Like, you know, just watch the 45-minute kid films.
Yeah.
like, I think
If you
it's
care
great.
about length, just get the cliff notes from somebody about Lord of the Rings because that's
Yeah.
too. Lord of the Rings is too long. How dare you?
So I think that's bullshit when they talk about being too long. That's just
Let's see. Mark Kermode, another top critic on Rotten Tomatoes.
top critics, man.
Not perfect by any means, with many things wrong with it, but Tom Holland's performance pulls you through it with the genre changing in each different section of his life. See, this guy gets it. Mark Kermode, you get it. I think that's spot on. Yeah, like it does change. There's different pieces. There's different chapters to his life. It's different.
Yeah. It's obvious. It wasn't like unintentional. That was the intention.
Yeah, they break up each section with a
Like,
scene that says, chapter freaking 2 or something like that.
I think that's what they need because it goes from a regular kid to a kid that doesn't know what to do with his life to joining the army because that's the thing to do, and he already said he was going to do it. It was kind of funny when his girlfriend tried talking him out of it. He's like, well, I already said I was going to do it, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah,
it's like no second thought.
Too, because now that I know, I've been in the army, I know. So he had signed the enlistment papers, right? Yeah. And then he was waiting to go to MEPS, I believe, waiting to go to basic. What you don't know and what nobody tells you is that you still don't have to show up. I mean, it's bad. You did sign a contract saying you're going to show up, but you're not officially in the army yet until you show up to MEPS and basic. I know you signed that contract, believe me. I'm not saying it's a positive thing not to show up. It's bad. But you don't actually have to show up. They'll just cancel your contract.
So it's like when you buy a home or something else, you could cancel within 3 days if you change your mind, right?
Something like that. I mean, it's not good. It's not preferred. You sign the contract, you should go. But I do know a couple of guys that signed the contract and didn't show up, and nothing happened to them.
It's probably because they told their parents or someone, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And they changed their mind.
I'm sure there could be like somebody in the army that is really pissed off and then chases you down and makes you pay for it. But like I said, in my experience with a few people that I knew that just never showed up, they were fine. You signed the contract, you should go to basic is what I'm saying. I'm not trying to promote people signing army contracts and then not going.
He's not a recruiter.
If you sign the contract, go. But why would you sign the contract to begin with? Don't go to the army. He says in Cherry, at the very end, right, there's a single sentence that says, so don't join the army. Do literally anything else.
For some people, that's what they like. They make a profession out of it. But yeah, it's something that you really got to think about. Because it's a lifestyle, like you said. It's a whole different world. So think about it.
Yeah, right? There's all these random scenes in the book that's not in the movie that provide context to his life.
Yeah.
And kind of explain why he thinks the way he does and why he does things the way he does. There's a lot more detail in the book where they skip over all of that detail in the movie and he just does things.
In the movie, they just, I don't know, they skip all that. Which, I don't know, to me it was interesting because I was just curious, like, oh shit. He's too nice, man. Someone's going to screw him over. Mm-hmm. And no, he just keeps getting by. I guess all these guys have like a mutual understanding, I guess, amongst the drug, the druggies or something.
Which, yeah, he seems like a nice drug addict.
Yeah.
That, why would you screw over this guy? He's so nice.
Yeah, like I could relate to this guy. Let me give this nice
I did like the scene in the movie where they were trying to break into that safe. That was an awesome scene, and I like the end result of that scene, right, where Pills and Coke shows up. Pills and Coke gives him this job of getting this safe and keeping it
just holding onto it for a while, right? Holding onto it,
and then they're like desperate for drugs, and they're like, "Well, this is a drug dealer's safe. What do you think is inside of it?" And then, like a drug addict, they're desperately trying to find out what's in it. They break it open.
After like throwing it out the window and all these things.
They get like super high, and then Pills and Coke shows up. He's all happy and like ready to pick up the safe. And
but he was banging on the door, and they thought it was the cops.
So they so they didn't even do all of the drugs in the safe. Yeah. They think it's the cops at the door. They flush all the drugs down the toilet.
Down the toilet, in the trash, all over the place. They're like covered with it. They look like shit.
James Lightfoot is passed out on the floor the entire time, doesn't even wake up.
So when he goes in, he was like, what the fuck happened here? Like, he's still happy, doesn't know what's going on. And they told him. Oh, man, he got so pissed.
So there's some good scenes in the movie. Like, if you're just going to watch it by itself, it's totally fine. It's 73% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's accurate.
But even after that, he was understanding, right? Like, this is normal.
So Pills and Coke ends up being a very understanding drug dealer.
Yeah, it's just interesting. He did ask him to pay him back, which he did eventually.
And that was the catalyst for him robbing banks, right? He needs to now find a bunch of money to make up for all of these drugs that he stole out of the safe and then flushed down the toilet.
Yeah.
And he figures, I'm just going to rob a bank. Which there's a really good moment in the book that he says something like, you go to the bank and you see these people behind the counter and you always think about it, but you never do it. And then you realize how easy it is once you decide to do it. And the only thing stopping you is your choice in deciding to do it.
So, Tony, would you recommend for people that haven't read the book or watched the movie, do you have to read the book to understand the movie? Or can you just watch the movie and feel like you don't have to read the book? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the book provides more context to what happens in the movie, but you don't have to read the book. You can watch the movie and still walk away satisfied. I think if you
Okay.
hate reading, don't read the book. That's what I recommend. If you don't like reading, don't read a book.
Yeah.
Watch the movie. It's fine.
But the book does go into more detail, right, about that lifestyle and everything he experiences. So.
Yeah, if you want to get a better understanding of a drug addiction lifestyle and lifestyle of the army,
Yeah.
then read the book. The book is really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's worth it. It's an easy read too.
All the tank stations are ready.